Yeah. So when you talk about neurodiversity, could you give us some examples of
Yeah.
what it is, or break it down for us?
So neurodiversity is the umbrella term for sort of anybody that is ADHD, autistic, but also dyslexia, dyspraxia comes under
Right.
that
Oh,
umbrella.
right. Okay.
Tourette syndrome comes under that umbrella. So it basically just, in simple terms, people's brains are just wired a little bit differently.
Yeah.
And therefore they see the world in a different way.
Yeah.
Which part of what I'm trying to do with my business is to help people embrace that.
Yeah.
Break down again barriers that are in and around anybody that's neurodiverse in terms of how they view themselves and helping them to embrace it when they're diagnosed. And also, you know, I did some training a long time ago, and it stuck in my head, and it was always, why do we expect them to fit into our world? Actually, we should be fitting into their world.
Yeah. Is it like then a matter of sort of, you know, getting people that aren't neurodiverse to accept the neurodiversity as well? That must be, you know, it's difficult, you know, obviously you're dealing with everyone there, you know, the majority, but it's like breaking down barriers with neurodiverse people to understand the challenges and the things that neurodiverse people have.
Absolutely. So when we're looking at sort of neurodiverse versus neurotypical, which would be me and you, you know, the majority of people in the population are neurotypical. So of course, you know, it's the majority, and they fit into a diverse minority. So for me, that should be looked at and viewed at as we would any minority group. And there are challenges and obstacles constantly in the way to allow neurodiverse people to flourish and reach their potential. And that starts for me in school. You know, the battles that people face to get their child diagnosed. Now, all the research and evidence says the earlier somebody gets a diagnosis, the earlier we can put interventions in place, whether that's therapeutic or behavioural, if you like, to help them, children and young people, to overcome the impairments that come with neurodiversity, to then help them later in life have as normal in sort of high as they can. But actually, for whatever reason, I think probably fear more than anything, schools are really reluctant. I would say more in primary than in secondary schools. They're reluctant to acknowledge or accept that somebody might have a neurodiversity.
Why do you think that is?
But I think there's a fear and a lack of training. I think the fear is that if a child gets a diagnosis of autism, for example, or ADHD, that the amount of things they're going to have to put in place, so the reasonable adjustments that might need to be put into place, are going to be huge and expensive, and it's going to take lots of time, and they're going to have to do an EHCP, which is an early help plan, that it's too time consuming or it's going to be too expensive. And it isn't really, you know, in terms of ADHD, simple adjustments in class can make all the difference. And them adjustments are really useful for neurotypical children as well.
I can imagine.
So if that then stops behavioural outbursts that then disrupts a class, then another member of staff has to come in and take that child out, and then something might go on in the corridor, and then it's just utter chaos. If, you know, rather than that being seen as that child has behaviour issues, if we look a little bit closer, and obviously it's not that for all children, but if we look a little bit closer and be open to the idea there could be a neurodiversity there, then actually in the long run, it's better for that school, because they can put things in place, structures in place, strategies in place that help that child to learn, which is the overall objective, but to feel calmer, included, build their social skills, so that then when they move into high school, it's a little bit more of a seamless transition. But equally, it doesn't have the school in chaos, staff running around everywhere.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought surely it's better for the school to embrace that, you know, if diagnosis is the right term, you know, and then they know, don't they? Then they can put things in place to make it better for that child, the class, the teachers, everyone around. So it don't make sense to me to sort of, you know, just bury your head in the sand and just put it down to a behavioural issue. It's better to know, isn't it, I think?
Absolutely. And I think, look, not every school's like that. I've been in some really fantastic schools, but there are other schools that do want to bury their heads in the sand. You know, I remember going into one school right at the beginning of my work, and was met with the it always makes me laugh, with the person saying to me, we are a very affluent school, so we don't have any issues here that we would need your counselling for.
Right. Oh.
One, it's not a massively affluent school in a massively affluent area anyway. But two, you know, my response to that was, all right, so wealthy people don't have abuse and violence in the family or what have you. We don't have that.
No.
In the 8 years or so that was on my area, I had one counselling case in 8 years.
Well, money, it doesn't matter how much money you've got, does it? You know, money, you know, it's not sort of mental health or neurodiversity. It isn't, you know, it's not that it doesn't choose, does it? You know, well, that's a nice area, we'll go somewhere else. It's a ridiculous thing to think or say, is that?
I know. And, you know, that, like I said, I had one counselling case in 8 years there, where other schools, you know, I was in every week, you know, 3 or 4 clients every week there. And
does that go down to the stigma, though? Sorry to interrupt, but does that go down to like the stigma and that school who said that to you? To me, straight away is, oh, you know, we're better than that. That's how that came across to me.
I think so. Yeah. I think so. And that, to me, isn't about the staff in that school. It's not about the pastoral teams. It's not about the teachers, because when you talk to them, they get it, they see it, they want the support, they want the help. It comes to the higher ups, and depends on who you have higher up. I know some schools that are very well-being and mental health orientated and have a whole team dedicated to it, and fantastic. And actually, when you see the work that they do versus some other schools, you can quite clearly see the evidence of what they're doing. You know, and what happens is then the cases that come to me have had support and intervention already, and they've tried everything they can, and then that becomes a case that is appropriate to work with, and they will have supported the family, and you know, and they'll have done a lot. And by the time that family comes to me, there's no anger or animosity. It's you know, school have been fantastic, we've tried everything, so now we're with you, and they're really engaged and they want the help. And they're the cases that seem to be more successful when they've had that support from the school, versus cases from, say, some of these other types of schools. By the time the parent gets to me, they're angry, the relationship with school's broken down, they're resistant to me, you know. Then so part of my work is having to bring them back around to the idea that we can help them, which takes time away from what we should be doing. Then you kind of become that advocate where you're going into school saying, right, can we just do this or this? They're resistant because, I don't know, that parent slagged them off on Facebook, wrote a letter in, so they don't want to do it. And that's when it becomes a challenge.
I can imagine.
And you think, how can we change things when school and parent might not even communicate anymore?
No, that's it. I think that's the key, isn't it? If like they're not communicating, and it's easy for, you know, for me to sit here and say this is what everyone should be doing, and it just, to me, seems a bit, I can't believe that, you know, you mentioned then earlier that some schools are brilliant, you know, are better than others with mental health support, and some aren't. And why is that? Is it down to money? Is it down to what really? I can't understand that. It's like saying some schools are better at maths than others. Surely it should be across they should all be doing that. Any reasons why that might happen?
I think it's about whoever's in charge and what their view of mental health is. You know, if you've got a head at the top who thinks mental health is utter rubbish, then what ethos are they going to have through the school? And then they tend to, you know, employ people in the senior leadership team that have a similar view to them, because that's what works. You know, that's what makes them a team, is they're all singing from the same hymn sheet. So I think, you know, it really massively depends at who's at the top of the chain. I think it is changing. There are massive changes since I started 9 years ago. More schools are now moving towards the way of mental health. I think with what's happened in the last 12 months, there will be a massive emphasis on it now, whether schools want it or not. You know, there's a lot of funding coming in to support schools with children's mental health. So I think, you know, if one good thing maybe comes out of the pandemic is this big push and awareness around children's mental health now.
I can understand what you mean. I suppose, like, it's a bit of a cliche, but the more old school, you know, heads and things. Back in day as well, I suppose, mental health was, everyone had it, but it wasn't a thing, was it? It was just, I'll get on with it, you know. Even going back, I suppose, you know, people came back from Second World War and were just pushed straight back into civilian life, weren't they? We know, and I suppose that even recent wars have done. So I think when people are still of the, you know, older school type of thinking, they don't see, you know, that mental health is, to me, the first thing anyone should be getting right. You know, never mind maths and English, and it's easy me saying it, but you know, maths and English are nothing, are they, compared to what's
absolutely, you know. And there's the argument, isn't it, whether, you know, within the school system, is it well-being or is it academics? Well, actually, without well-being, the academics aren't going to happen. We know that if a child is anxious, has suffered trauma, has another barrier like neurodiversity, their ability to learn is hindered. So ultimately, that affects the school's rating when it comes to exams.
I totally agree.
There has to be a trade-off.
I totally agree.
You've got to go, okay, do we lose a bit of this and we'll have more of this?
Do you think that, I think they're under such pressure as well, though, to get the grades, that it's all a bit short-term thinking, you know, where like you say, if they're just a bit of pain to start with, that would bear more fruit, wouldn't it? I think certainly for the pupils, the staff, everyone, you know, everyone would be a better, like any business or any place. The better your mental well-being is of everyone that's in that place, institution, business, the better the whole entity is, isn't it?
And I think the well-being side of it, whether it's schools or, like, say, businesses, but if you know, we were talking about schools then, the well-being side of it isn't just about the children, it is about the staff. You know, the staff need to be supported, if, you know, and that ethos then runs through that school. Will support the staff support the kids, and actually, you know, we have to remember that teachers usually will be the first point of call for a child to make a disclosure. So if something's happened at home, or, you know, there's been an incident, whether that child has been hurt themselves, the teacher will either notice the bruises, or the child will go and tell the teacher what's happened if they've got a good relationship. So that teacher then, they can't unhear that. That's there, and they also know then that they're involved in whatever comes next. That takes a huge amount of emotional feeling from them. You know, energy. Energy, it's draining. I don't get any kind of supervision for that. You know, the pastoral teams, their supervision might be a case supervision. It might be how many cases have you got and what are you doing and what's the safeguard in it. But it's rarely coming from a clinical point of view of, okay, you've got X amount of cases on your caseload and 3 of them are abuse victims. What's that like for you hearing that? How's that impacting you? How do we help you with that? So that's something else I want to be able to, with the business that I'm doing. I'm currently doing my clinical supervision training, is once I'm qualified to be able to offer that as a support in schools and say, look, clinical supervision isn't just for therapists, it's for anybody that's having to work in a helping profession that is going to be impacted emotionally and mentally by the work that they do. Because ultimately, again, people have a tolerance and a level that they get to before they burn out.
This is why maybe a lot of teachers are away with stress and things like that, because they're seeing so many things through their children, and no one's actually, or not no one, but very few of them are getting the, as you said, the supervision, the support of that. It's just like, you're a teacher, crack on, but it's not just about, I suppose, writing numbers on a whiteboard, is it? It's all the emotional, not baggage, it's just wrong term, but all the emotional energy that you have to, expend, and seeing your pupils, with their mental health or their things at home. So what do you think what do you think can be done then to improve access? I know that's the thing that you're very, very passionate about. What could be done to improve access to mental health support and things?
I think it's schools being aware that there could be things that they can tap into in terms of like yourself within you, if schools can buy into something like that, if they can allocate some of their mental health funding towards allowing teachers and pastoral staff to either access supervision, or actually, if something quite bad happens within their lives, some kind of therapy, it's having money put aside to be able to give them that. And a lot of schools probably do for the therapeutic side, not necessarily the supervision side. But I think one of the big barriers to that, which we'll keep coming back to as the topic really, and the barriers is time off for it. And I think what you're looking at doing with the digital platform will remove some of them barriers for not just schools but other organisations where okay, we can't let you go 3 hours early to make sure you drive halfway across the city to get to your appointment, but actually, you can have an extended lunch break and we'll give you a private room where you can access a computer. Or, if someone really wants face-to-face, we'll let you go an hour earlier. And them not be financially sort of punished for that.
It's a bit like dealing with the cause and not the symptoms, I suppose, isn't it? Getting there first. And as you said, just to me, it's common sense, but common sense ain't common. And I don't run a school, so I'm not saying it's easy, but I totally get you where a lot of it's time and resource, isn't it? And having that. And but if that's not offered to them, they're just going to burn out, which a lot of teachers are, and a lot of people that, not just teachers, but staff, as you said, pastoral care, that they are burning out. So surely it's better to deal with the cause before it becomes a symptom. So is it a matter of sort of maybe educating, I'm not trying to sort of aim this at head teachers or whatever, but ultimately it's educating the people that make the decisions on how this will benefit them and ultimately their pupils.
I think there's a lot of schools now are part of multi-academy trusts. So the heads are just the head of their school, but they will follow a set of rules that's from the multi-academy. So you'll have a CEO type, if you like, at the top of the academy chain. So ultimately, I think it goes to them as part of their staff welfare, their policies and procedures, that it becomes very clear that there are routes available if them staff need some support. And that is filtered all the way down, because let's be honest as well, especially right now, heads are under increasing pressure and they're having to do things that they've never even done. We're hearing about almost like test sites now in car parks of schools, and staff having to give COVID tests. They're not medical professions, but the logistics of that are coming down onto SLT. Plus the parents that either are nervous, anxious, don't want it, whatever. They've got so much to contend with and have done for 12 months. So I'm sure they will all be in need of some support. And you'll know yourself that most organisations now will have some kind of what they call the Employee Assisted Programme, EAP, which is usually about 6 sessions of therapy to an employee, if that enables them to overcome whatever might be stressing them out, so they're not off on long-term sick. You know, and that's quite common now, and lots of companies sign up to that kind of program. I think some schools are starting to, but again, it hasn't been seen as a business in that sense.
Yeah.
But more and more they are becoming like businesses. So of course they should have that access to therapy, I guess, and supervision.
I think that supervision is a massive point that's come across that I think is really something that's going to come out in the next certainly 12 months. I think people understanding that these teachers and pastoral care staff do need that, you know, supervision. But I think, just to reiterate what you said, they're under immense pressure. They've got loads on, and they're doing an amazing job, aren't they? Under the circumstances that they're under, from you know, the top to the bottom. These schools are doing amazing with what they're having to put up with at the minute. But sort of just from a professional outwards, have you got any tips to anyone about how to help with a neurodiverse individual, a neurodiverse child? Anything that could help the non-neurodiverse people, is that the correct term? Neurotypical. So to help neurotypical people understand neurodiverse individuals, have you got any sort of tips that we could, you know, follow, look out for, undertake?
Yeah, I think you know, back in the day, if we're talking about autism, you will have been in school with people and gone, oh, they're a bit weird or a bit quirky or a bit, you know, and that was kind of the labels that were given to people. And I think, look, you know, I'm working with a young lad at the moment, and he is embracing the fact that he calls himself weird, and he likes the fact, because in his mind he goes, well, the world would be really boring if we were all the same.
Agree.
You know, so that's part of that embracing. So for me, as a neurotypical person who's been learning around this, and, you know, I've spoke to you before about my son has ADHD, so that's where my passions come from. You know, and the barriers that we face to get his diagnosis, and the barriers we still face now. But the research I've done, the reading I've done, the training I've done is always about embracing who they are. Yes, there will be impairments, and it's understanding that the impairments are not because they're bad kids, naughty kids, angry kids. You know, the amount of times I hear anger issues, even attributed to adults that are neurodiverse. It's taking the time to understand what their needs and impairments are, because everybody's different. Again, you know, we call it a spectrum for a reason. You know, their needs are always different. If you meet one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. So they're not, you can't have identical needs. They might have certain traits that are the same. But if you're working with someone in your organisation that is autistic or ADHD, then it's taking the time to speak to them and to understand what their difficulties are. It's taking the time to read up a little bit on what autistic traits might be. So, for instance, autistic people don't get sarcasm. They don't understand it. You know, the way their brain works is that they hear something and they take it literally. So, you know, there's no sort of imagination around what they're saying, the sarcasm. Whatever you say is, they will take it.
What you say is what you mean, basically.
Absolutely. So that can come across as rude, offish, you know, blunt, you know, so, and it's not, you know, so it's understanding that, it's understanding they might have sensory issues, so therefore too much noise can be overwhelming and overstimulating. You know, for organisations, it's having that kind of policy in place that takes into account those needs. You know, and I think a lot of organisations are getting better at that and putting policies in place. There's an organisation called Embracing Complexity. They do a lot of research into neurodiversity, and they write reports on data they collect around sort of neurodiversity in the workplace and give recommendations.
Excellent.
So that's a good one for any organisation and any company listening.
Brilliant.
To go to Embracing Complexity's website and have a look at the documents they have on there as a resource.
Brilliant.
That can help you form how your business will run.
No, but I'll put a link in the after this. You know, when we publish the podcast, I'll put a link in there to that and things.
Yeah, I can send you all of that as well. So you've got the links.
Yeah.
There's a couple of other places that do things like that. So I think, you know, as an organisation and working with people, that's what we can do, is just talk to them and understand their needs and be inclusive of them. A lot of autistic people are desperate for connection.
Yeah.
They want to connect. They want to get on with people. It's their self-esteem that stops that.
Yeah.
It's that barrier for them of people, you know, they'll have heard messages all their life that they're weird or they're this or that.
Yeah.
So it's for us to go, do you know what, let's include them. Let's understand. Let's bring them in. I think where children are concerned and young people, it's education and training to staff in schools, to listen to parents when they are wondering if there could be something and not dismiss them.
Yeah.
It's letting them be heard. Again, it might be parent training with them in terms of how do we help you to think about a diagnosis might mean, what are you wanting, what are you hoping for by a diagnosis. But ultimately, it's understanding the traits and then how can we make some adjustments to include them children again, for their self-esteem and their confidence to not be continually knocked. And I think the most important part of that as well is educating the other children, the neurotypical children.
Yes. Yeah.
On neurodiversity. I think that is the biggest thing, because most of the issues not just come from not being able to learn in the classroom, but it's friendship issues.
Yeah.
You know, that child might be seen as really immature or really angry or the naughty kid, and let's stay away from them.
Yeah. That's what I've seen though, as well as maybe, you know, the education side. I've seen the parents of the neurotypical children not understanding neurodiverse children and saying things like, "Oh, just stay away from them."
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, you know, that the neurotypical parent is wrong, because again, it's all down to understanding and knowledge and being educated on it. And I think that's where schools are in such a difficult position, because it's like, well, we have to educate everyone on neurodiversity, and that's, I've seen that with, certainly, like I said, parents that have gone, oh well, just he's a naughty boy, just stay away from him, and and they think, no, he's not. I know he's not, by what the child's saying. You can see that it's not a behavioural issue per se. It's a, well, I would, before this, I didn't use the term neurodiversity. I'd used, he's on the spectrum, but now he's a neurodiverse child. And sort of what you've said, Tasha, has been fantastic for me, certainly, because I've learned, you know, the terminology, but it's also given me a fresh insight into neurodiverse people, and hopefully, you know, given me a bit of something to think about moving forward as well, because I think it's too easy for neurotypical people to judge. We all judge, don't we? And it's sort of thing, you see someone and you judge them good, bad, indifferent. Like, you're going back to what you said about, for example, there's 7 other kids, it must be, and people always label everyone and each other, don't they? And I think it's taught me to not just jump into and put a child in a certain box, and, you know,
absolutely. Or even, you know, it's the same with adults, you know. It's exactly the same. And I think the other thing that I really want to try and push for in everything that I do in terms of my business, and I think I mentioned to you last week, I was doing my first podcast with somebody, which I've done, and that's going to come out next week, because next week is Neurodiverse Celebration Week.
Oh, is it?
So,
oh, fantastic.
Yeah. So it's going to come out as a part of my contribution to Neurodiverse Celebration Week. So that's with somebody that I know who's got ADHD, who is a massively successful kickboxing coach in this country, and has done some wild challenges, shall we say, like pulled a plane for the distance of a marathon and things like that. Yeah. Yeah, he's got another challenge coming up in the summer, which is probably even more bonkers. But one of the things me and him spoke about, and one of the things I want to push, because I see it in my own son, is what we call their superpowers. We focus on the impairments or the negatives of being more diverse, but actually there's so much that is wonderful. You know, they're diverse for a reason. You know, I feel like my best work has been with neurodiverse children. I find it energizing, I find it exciting. I think they're amazing. They all come with something different, superpower wise. And I want to be able to help people to see the positive in that. You know, again, with adults, I'm working with an adult autistic man at the moment, you know, and his whole life he thinks that he's not that, you know, interesting. Yet he is a florist, he's a keen photographer, he DJs, you know, there's all these things, and I go, wait a minute, wow, how amazing is that? So it's about it, you know, embracing those diversities and going, they're amazing.
Well, that's exactly what you said. The diversity, that gentleman, those three things could probably not be any more diverse, could they? You know, where a neurotypical person would probably just that's about one thing, where this neurodiverse individual is playing to his strengths and he's doing such brilliant things. And
well, he's got this creative part of him, but then he's got this very logical part of him that probably comes with his autism, and he's very sort of computer based. So again, you wouldn't be, you know, the contrast in himself is amazing. But I think, you know, it's helping them to recognize their superpowers and embrace themselves. And then if they can be proud to talk about it in public rather than feeling ashamed about it, which I think is a big thing in neurodiverse people. There's almost this shame, because actually there will have been struggles as a child and a young person. They will have had to overcome so many obstacles, and actually their resilience is so high that we can all learn something from that. And to get to where they want to be will take an awful amount of work from them and a lot of support around them. But, you know, let's be honest, I personally think, and there's research around it, that neurodiversity is evolutionary. That evolution has said that we need to have neurodiverse people because we need people that can think outside the box to solve problems in the world that will continue to come up. So whether that, you know, you look at the people that are known to be autistic, like Einstein and people like that, if they weren't autistic, we wouldn't have the inventions we have. We wouldn't have cures to disease. You know, they've become hyper focused on one thing and they don't give up until it's done and successful. Neurotypical people are easily diverted away from a task by their phone, going to the pub, cinema, socializing, all that stuff. A neurodiverse person will focus until that thing's done. And we need people like that, and we should be singing about them from rooftops.
We should be rooting them out. We should be, you know, they're the people that are going to change the world. Like you said, you know, there's people that have changed the world. And I think to do anything of significance, you've got to have that focus, haven't you? And I think it's too easy for most of us. You know, it's like, oh, I'll start that. Oh, then I'll start that. And then I'll do that. And then they wonder why they've not achieved what they want to achieve. It's because they don't have that, you know, razor-like focus. And everything I read about successful people, you know, whatever it is, whatever term of success that is, they've all got that one thing of that like laser-like focus. Whether they are neurodiverse or neurotypical, there's one theme that runs through them all. And I think we should be weeding them out. Sounds a bit odd, but you know, we should be going out and actively, you know, finding these people that will change society, you know, communities, the way we live, the way we work. And I think that's where neurotypical people can see them as a bit weird. Well, he's is like that. It just and I think, well, yeah, that's how you're successful. You know, you don't, it's like a dog chasing a squirrel. You know, a dog sees a squirrel, it's off, and that's what a lot of people are like, aren't they? Where if that dog's just focused on the task, not saying people are dogs, but you know what I mean. As an example, we are too easily distracted, and a lot of it is through mobile phones and social media and
at that point, then who's the weird ones? That
exactly.
We're moving away from our social norms of social interaction to be on our phones. So actually, for me, I'm going, actually, we should be learning now. But I know, who is it that's in charge of like MI5 and MI6 down in London, that big department? They actively advertise for neurodiverse people. Right. Because obviously within that industry, they need that laser focus.
Analytical skills. And...
So their recruitment drive.
It's amazing.
So I think that's again something we could all learn from. But I think that if we can overcome some of our assumptions about people, if we can put training into schools from an early age of the staff as well as other children, if we cannot be afraid anymore of children getting a diagnosis, get these early diagnoses, let's get them the support they need, because they will need support. Let's get the therapy in there, or let's get them the strategies to help them manage their impairments. Let's build their confidence, let's celebrate them, let's build their esteem. And then as they move into adulthood, a lot of the other mental health issues will start to drop as well. The burden on the NHS will drop, because it's really well known that there are what we call co-occurring comorbidities or disorders that come with neurodiversity, whether that's depression, anxiety, OCD, and other issues like that. But like in any neurotypical person, they've got something underlying. So when that's a co-occurring disorder with neurodiversity, usually because their issues in childhood around their neurodiversity weren't recognised, and it's chipped away at them.
You can understand.
So if we do all of that, I'm not saying that's going to be the same for everyone, but the earlier we can support families, and the earlier we can support young people, and the earlier we can support schools with them young people, then through their life, those possibilities of anxiety and depression will hopefully lessen or not be as intense.
Well, it's a foundation, isn't it? And foundations always begin at the start. And if we're doing it in schools, then that's the start of that young person's life and career. So we build the foundations, as you've said, and then they won't hopefully grow into adults who are living all the things they've been told by society, who doesn't understand them. And like you say, if we can celebrate neurodiversity, and I think it's down to maybe the people that are more neurodiverse coming forward, and it's like when sort of sports people or movie stars talk about their mental health, it helps everyone, doesn't it, to think it's not just me then. So if neurodiverse people are coming out, I think, was Alan Turing neurodiverse, the guy that cracked the enigma?
But he was autistic. But even you look at modern day things at the moment. I do a lot of this with my son, because I want my son to embrace his ADHD. I want him to see his superpower, and I want him to have a future that he's excited about and proud of who he is. So I do a lot with him in terms of showing him other people with ADHD. So Justin Bieber's ADHD, will.i.am's ADHD. You look at Simone Biles, the 18 gold medal Olympic gymnastic champion in America. She's got ADHD. So, some of it is going, look at these amazing people that actually, unless you knew, you wouldn't know.
No, exactly,
So look at what they've done, and they're successful probably because they've got ADHD. And that's their thing, and they've gone, that's what I'm doing. It's always, for me, finding that niche. What is their niche? What is their thing? And I think the other way we can support schools is, a curriculum for some children, the normal curriculum isn't going to work. Let's find what they're good at and let's tailor that curriculum to them. I know with my son, anything that's too much writing, too much reading, he can't deal with.
Yeah.
He can hear it in his audio, but actually there are other things that he's brilliant at. I'd rather him have 6-7 subjects that he focuses on than coming out with 9 or 10 GCSEs and he might fail half of them. I'd rather have a smaller set of subjects that he can give everything to and pass all of them.
Yeah, but them subjects that are relevant to his skill set and his abilities, and like this is I think that classic line: if you judge a fish on its ability to climb a tree, it's going to be a failure. I only said that probably last week to someone, but it's showing me when we're discussing things like this how society is set to judge people on the norms, and there's no such thing, is there?
No. And then we are then setting these kids up to fail.
Yeah.
It goes back to, okay, well, let's chip away at their self-esteem a little bit more.
Yeah. You didn't get a B in maths, you didn't get a C in this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. Instead of saying, well, this isn't what you're good at. You're good at.
Well, you're an incredible chef or a baker or an artist. Or actually, your skills lie verbally. And you could be the most amazing salesperson. Yeah. I saw that at school so much that when I was at school, it was just like literally. I remember once I was in sixth form and like the head of the sixth at the time sort of came into the assembly and said, right, today anyone that wants to go to university, stay back and we're going to talk you through it. Anyone that don't, you can go home. And I was like, oh no, anyone that wants a job, you can go home. And it was like, hey. So they're helping these people that go to university. What are people that don't? It was like, oh, get yourself off, take afternoon off. And even back then I thought, that's not right. And I look back at the school I went to and I had some fabulous, great teachers. But what I mean by great teachers of life. They were fantastic. But the school itself, knowing what I know now, and even back then I thought something wasn't right, were just, I suppose it was they're all the curriculum to follow, but they were just they judged all the kids on whether you were going to get A's, B's, and C's. And I look back now, and all the people that, well, they're not where others are, shall I say, in their lives, and because they've been judged on grades and exams. How good are you at remembering stuff to write it down at the end of the year? Exactly. And that's not life, is it?
Bonkers.
That's not life.
It's totally wrong.
You look at a lot of great businessmen now, and they'll all tell you that they dropped out of school at 14, 15 years of age. But actually, again, the best entrepreneurs generally have ADHD because they come up with constant ideas for businesses and constantly working on them and evolving on them. And, it's that creative side, isn't it? Of, okay, what's the next challenge? What's the next thing? Yeah.
So many of them I've read have said, oh, I'm dyslexic. So many books I've read, and there's that many that I can't remember. But honestly, literally, they've all said, I'm dyslexic. So many, and they say, I can't, I struggle to write things down, but they're ultra successful in what they do. Absolutely. And it just shows that it shouldn't stop you, should it? But it's society, I think, that is.
I think so. I think there's it's how do you find a way in to access the learning for that person, because this can happen in colleges, in unis, and people going back as mature students. If we understand that they've got something like dyslexia or ADHD or autism, what it is about understanding again their impairment, their needs, and how do we overcome that as a barrier. So for my son, for example, French, when we go on holiday, he picks up languages. He will still say a couple of things in Thai. We went to Thailand like 3 years ago. So he's got a bit of a natural talent. If he listens to something, he can get it. So he's doing French at school, getting really low marks in vocab tests because it's on a sheet of paper. You read it, you cover it up, you write it, you check it. Too many processes for him. So I emailed school and said, is there any way this vocab can be put onto an audio that he can put in his ears? And as he hears it, he repeats it. Yep, we've got this platform we can do it on. Did it. 2 minutes. So where it might have took half an hour for him to do that, this is 2 minutes of listening to this 20 words. Test scores went up.
Brilliant. It's fantastic that the school did that as well, and
yeah,
brilliant.
I've got to say his school are really, really good in terms of neurodiversity.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky he goes there.
Yeah. Do you want to give him a shout out? Can we say who they are?
Yeah, the Redillion Academy, and they have a specific person called Mr. Naomi, who's amazing, who is for the neurodiverse children. So he works mainly with ADHD and autism, and he's fantastic. And he's been a lifesaver through this lockdown, I've got to say. But they're really open to listening. So when I emailed him and said, look, I think if you can do it on audio, it might help him.
Yeah.
It did. So now we're kind of going, okay, how can we use that in other subjects now that can help him?
Yeah, fantastic.
And I think teachers now in training, I think there's a big part of their training now is on SEN needs and understanding it. So again, I'm thinking we're on the right path.
Yes. Yeah.
Hopefully things will be changing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I can do anything else to push that, then obviously I'm gonna do what I can.
So can you just remind us what next week is? Because we'll put this out next week as the first one in our mental health series as part of the, what week is it again? Sorry.
So it's Neurodiverse Celebration Week. Fantastic. So I'm putting my podcast out to do that. And to be fair, it's a one-man band. It's a young lady who's got autism and some other neurodiversities who's decided to do this for herself, and she's got loads of people on board. So she's done great. So I'll send you the link to that.
Yeah, and I'll put that in. I'll link it to the sort of text in this podcast as well, Tasha. So, well, Tasha, thank you so much. It's been really enlightening, and I've learnt loads. And I think if I've learnt loads, someone as simple at learning as I am, it'll be easy for everyone else who are a lot more intelligent than me, because it has just opened my eyes just to that one term, neurodiverse. And when you think about it, it just opens up your thinking as to what neurodiverse people are. It is, and it absolutely it is, and it's a great term. And thanks for sharing that. And it's something that we'll push. So
yeah, definitely, because I think where the digital platform will be brilliant for neurodiversity is for them neurodiverse people who have social anxiety, who can't get out, and will access it through a digital platform. You're overcoming another barrier for them people by doing what you're doing, which is amazing.
Well, it's like you said, Tasha, like, you've met one neurodiverse person, you've met one neurodiverse person. And that, again, that really struck a chord with me. And I think that's something that as people listen to this, that will stick with them as well. So there's all these little things that you've said that to you are things you know and the things that you work on every day. But to people like myself, it's brilliant. All these things have sat with me, and I'll take them in, I'll take these forward into everything I do, because it's about, instead of looking at someone and judging them, looking at someone and just stepping back and trying to maybe, hold off on that and just try and maybe understand why that situation is occurring. And I think it'll make for a more inclusive and nicer society, won't it? So absolutely. So thanks so much, Tasha. It's been amazing. I've really enjoyed it. I've really loved it. Thanks again. Me. No, thanks so much, Tasha. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Danny.
Right, so I can cut it there, and then I can stop. I can cut it. So what I'll do, Tasha, I'll pull it out, the audio. I'll send it to you. Obviously, whenever you can. It's no rush. Just check that everything's okay. But I know it is. It's fantastic. It's absolutely brilliant.
Oh, thank you.
Just let us know, and then I'll get it up, and I'll get it up at some point next week.
Yeah.
For our first mental health series, and we'll put something all around the sort of neuro. What was it again?
Neurodiverse Celebration Week.
Neurodiverse Celebration. Right.
I'll send you the link today, so you've got it all there to hand.
Brilliant. Thanks. Well, I'm gonna let.
Cheers, Danny.
Thanks a lot. I'll speak to you soon. Take it easy, Tasha.
Bye.
See you. Bye bye.